You're overseas with your cell phone and you don't want to pay, Joe, for, an overseas plan or overseas extension. All you need is a GoTenna. GOTENNA.com. It sends texts and GPS locations immediately and automatically, privately, one-to-one, or to groups, or as public shouts without any cell service, routers, towers, or satellites necessary. Great in an emergency, by the way. Perfect to maintain connectivity and create a backup network when off-grid exploring. Maybe you have a boat, you're out in the ocean, you got another friend in a boat out there. This is terrific for that. When traveling internationally or emergency situations where power and consequently cell service is unreliable and unavailable, GoTenna is your solution there. GoTenna.com. Again, it's a new revolutionary technology. It's the first company of its kind to use phones to communicate without any of these satellite services around or cell services. The future's now. It's compatible with any iOS or Android device. Helps you leverage the smartphone you already have in your pocket. It extends your network and strengthens communications. Plus, the more friends that join, the stronger it gets. Whether you're spending time outdoors or preparing for an emergency, GoTenna is vital where this stuff is unavailable. Wi-Fi, you don't need any of that. You just need your phone and the GoTenna. This thing is terrific, folks. Here's a promo code for you for a really nice savings on this. Dan35, that's my first name, Dan, D-A-N 35. Go to GoTenna.com. That's GOTENNA.com, GoTenna.com. Pick this up today. Great to have in an emergency. And use promo code DAN35 for a nice savings on the product. It's great in an emergency. Again, you don't need any tower, Wi-Fi, any of that stuff. GoTenna.com. Okay, so they had this conference at the Roosevelt Room, press conference, where Trump had some lawmakers there, and they were talking about guns. And some things that came out in the press conference were interesting, and I wanted to be sure I addressed them. Listen, let me just get this out of the way by saying I support the president. I think he's doing a pretty decent job. I think the tax cuts, the regulatory reform, I think this fight against the D.C. swamp, I also think his fight against the media are noble endeavors, and I think he's handled them correctly. Mm-hmm. But I do think there have been some stumbling blocks, and I would be doing you a huge disservice if I ignored them, because we can't talk about the Democrats and their allegiance to people rather than ideas. And then on the show, when we think some ideas that come out that are not necessarily good, we have to be able to speak out. Again, I think his heart was in the right place with the press conference, but he said something there, and I just want to explain to you why I think this is a bad idea. He had mentioned something about due process and how we should take the guns first and worry about due process later when it comes to people with mental health issues. And there's a couple problems with that, folks. Yeah. And some people have attributed it to he just doesn't understand the process. I'm not sure. I don't know what the president understands or doesn't understand, and I don't want to say that. I'm not going to, play the left's game and assume the president is ignorant about things. Maybe he did know. Maybe he didn't. I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. All I know is what he said. And what he insinuated was that we should, take the guns first in a situation like that and worry about due process later. Well, in multiple states, matter of fact, I'm pretty sure across the country, they have these emotionally disturbed person laws called the Baker Act here in Florida, where if you're a danger to yourself or others, the police, in fact, can take your guns. Now, they have to give them back after a certain period of time without a judicial proceeding. So that's kind of a non-issue, which confused a lot of people. When we're talking about the immediacy, Joe, of removing a person who is, deemed a danger to self or others from firearms. Mm-hmm. That's not immediately. Now, it may be a longer-term problem because they can get the guns back, and that's fine. But a couple things I wanted to bring up here. Number one, folks, there are unintended consequences if we were to write a law where if you're deemed mentally ill, that you are not allowed access to guns. And let's say you don't get due process. Say you get a diagnosis, whatever it may be, depression, general anxiety disorder, check out the DSM. There is literally a book called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Psychiatric Disorders. You can check it out yourself. There's an entire book of definable mental health disorders. Folks, let me ask you a question. Think about the unintended consequences. The revenge of unintended consequences is always, always something we should be concerned about. Joe, if you have depression and you are let's say an owner of a handgun for self-protection, you need it, whatever, you carry money, you have a business, or you just feel like you should be able to defend your home and family like most of us feel. Mm-hmm. Are you going to go to seek a mental health professional to seek help if your depression, let's say, worsens a bit and you know that your guns could be taken away?
No, I wouldn't. No.
I know most people wouldn't either. Folks, you have to remember, these are policy. The implications of this policy are not cut and dried. If you set up a system where due process goes out the window for mental health, people are not going to seek mental health treatment, which will worsen the situation. Now, compound that with the fact that the overwhelming majority of people with a mental health disorder are not violent. They are not. And I wonder now why the left, which is always so concerned about identity politics and discrimination, why the civil libertarians on the left are jumping on this bandwagon here, so-called civil libertarians show, to remove the constitutional rights of people with mental health disorders, despite very little evidence that people with mental health disorders are more violent than anyone else. And they're going to avoid, by the way, seeking mental health treatment, folks. There are unintended consequences for this stuff. It is a bad idea. I'm sorry, but due process matters. Now, should we make an effort over time through a legal proceeding if we believe someone with, you name the mental disorder, schizophrenia, any affective disorders, whatever they may be, should we make an effort over time to establish a legal process by which, if these people are obviously in the Nicholas Cruz case, are threatening people and are a danger to self or others, should not be able to obtain weapons? Of course, that's common sense. But they should be subjected to the same due process as anyone else. It's not right, folks. I'm sorry. And it was a bad call. And I believe his heart was in the right place. From what I've heard from a lot of people, he was deeply affected by some of the imagery of what happened at the Parkland shooting. I can't imagine what that scene looked like. The horror of it. But we live in a constitutional republic where decisions are difficult and they have ramifications, and we have to be cautious of that. Now, not to pile on here, folks, but also one more thing you mentioned about reciprocity. The reciprocity agreement, there seemed to be an insinuation that he's looking to sideline reciprocity right now, which is a bill that passed the House that would allow concealed carry holders who get a concealed carry permit in one state to, cross state lines. Folks, this is a common sense bill. I don't understand why the left objects to this. A constitutional right in Florida to carry should be the same constitutional right anywhere else. Why, when you go to New York, you have to then forfeit your constitutional right to carry, despite the fact that you had the right to carry in your own state, is absurd. We shouldn't sideline that. We should push that. It will make the country safer, not more dangerous. Concealed carry weapon holders, permit holders, are some of the most law-abiding people on the planet. I objected to that strongly. I thought it was just a really bad idea. Let me just read to you one more thing here, Joe. Mm-hmm. Why this, and now, I like to get into the political ramifications too. I know it sometimes seems shallow on these issues, but it's important, folks. Listen, politics is a projection of power. If you can't win the political debate, you can't win the debate about power at the end of the day either. This is a loser for anybody in the White House or anywhere else, this gun control issue, this push for more regulations that will have no impact on crime at all. From today's Wall Street Journal, Joe, this is why, and they're insinuating here based on this data that this is not going to be a winner at the polls. Most Republicans, Joe, and half of all independents live in a household with a gun. According to Pew Research, just 25% of Democrats do the same. Guns are very rare in heavily Democratic urban areas, very common in Republican rural America, and fairly common in the contested suburbs. Culturally, this means that Democrats live in a social circle where few own guns and many view them as an unmitigated evil with no redeeming qualities. Following a horrific mass shooting, they wonder when the rest of America will wake up and agree. But most Americans have a more nuanced view. Rather than seeing guns as evil, 67% of gun owners say it makes them more safe. This is a loser, folks. It's not a winner politically either. Now, I say all the time we should do what's right. We should not do what's easy, regardless of the politics. But in this case, what's right may not be what's easy, but the politics work too. Establishing more obstacles for legal American law-abiding gun owners to obtain a firearm to defend themselves while criminals get them on the black market is not a recipe to make us safer or for political success. It is a big mistake. This matters to me. I've had a gun for a long, long time. They are just tools, folks. That is all they don't shoot themselves. Yep. They don't have magic powers. They are just tools. That is it. All right. This story blew me away yesterday. sometimes I share personal stories. So I've been bouncing around and doing the high school tours with my daughters, getting ready to go to high school next year.
Mm-hmm.
My oldest. And while I'm in the parking lot headed in, I ran into a couple supporters. So if you're listening to the show, nice to meet you yesterday. But I saw this article come up from 2017 from a friend of mine, Diana West, who it's at the Daily Caller. And to be clear, it's a 2017 article. It'll be up at Bongino.com. Read it, please. If you're on my email list, I'll email it to you. You can subscribe to my email list at Bongino.com too. Again, we're thinking about putting more original content up there. It's going to blow your mind. A daily debunking section, which will be terrific. You can already check out Debunk This for our good, some of the good historical pieces we've linked to, but I'm thinking about putting original stuff up there. But this article is amazing. Remember, Joe, how I always say in these things, remember the names, especially with the Clinton email case and the Trump-Russia fiasco, the nonsensical scandal. Those of you listening to the show know it's been a big part of the show. I just wanted to quickly cover something because I read this piece. Again, it's from 2017. I was like, wait, what? Like, it blew my mind. So if you were listening to his show a few days ago, I see Joe's like, where is she going with this? I mentioned a Silicon Valley type Russian project they were doing in Russia to establish a tech hub in Russia.
Yeah.
And in this project, there was a big push to get some U.S. companies, international companies, to start this technology hub in Russia. And the Russians were expressing an unusually strong interest in lobbying some American lawmakers to get them to push for this project, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is critical. In 2012... I'm going to get to the name in a second. But in 2012, the Army did kind of an intelligence analysis on this project and was very concerned. The project was called Skolkovo. Now, I tweeted out yesterday, Skolkovo, don't forget it. Remember the names. I told you that the Obama team, because people ask me all the time, Joe, again, why go through all this effort to frame Trump, to spy on Trump, to make up this fake Trump-Russia scandal afterwards? Because they had so much to hide when it came to Russia, their need to, the Iran deal, the efforts to keep the Russians sidelined in the efforts to appease the Russians on the Uranium One deal, to keep them from objecting to the Iran deal. They needed their support for so much. They did everything, the Obama administration, to appease the Russians. Skolkovo was another one of these. There were 28 companies that were supposed to, folks, please pay close attention to this, because this is a devastating scandal. I'm going to tell you how it ties into a news story yesterday. There were 28 companies that were supposed to be a part of this technology hub in Skolkovo in Russia in this project. This Skolkovo Center. Mm-hmm. The Army analysis of this was devastating. The Army said, Joe, and I'm quoting here, Skolkovo is arguably an overt alternative to clandestine industrial espionage. Huh. In other words, they're not even trying to keep their industrial spying a secret. They just want all these tech companies to come over to Russia for this tech hub so they can just steal it out in the open. This was the Army's own analysis. Here's another analysis, another part of the analysis here. And I want you to listen to the last sentence, because if you're a news watcher and a news consumer of the day, something I'm going to say in this last sentence in their Army analysis of this should go ding, 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 ding. All right? Although military activities are not an official cluster of activity, the Skolkovo Foundation has, in fact, been involved in defense-related activities since December of 2011, when it approved the first weapons-related project, the development of a hypersonic cruise missile engine. What? Now, one more. The project is a response to the U.S. Department of Defense's Advanced Hypersonic Weapon, part of the global Prompt Global Strike program. You follow the news? Any of you, turn on Fox yesterday? Any of you listen to, WCBM where Joe works, or, the pull-up Drudge?
Huh?
What did the Russians announce yesterday? Vladimir Putin's running for president again for like the 6,000th time. The guy wants to be the czar of Russia. He's going to wind up getting cryo frozen, and he'll rule from the grave like RoboCop, where they remove his brain from his cryo frozen body and they put it in like a steel structure RoboCop type thing. Vladimir Putin wants to rule forever. He's running again for office. So he gives his speech and he announces yesterday the development, Joe, of a hypersonic cruise